The Force of Others, a Star Wars podcast.
Hello there, and welcome to The Force of Others. I'm Matt Boitner.
And I'm Zachary Owen Turner.
Lies! We do not lie in the new year.
Nobody will be able to tell.
If you can't tell, for our first podcast of 2025, we are unfortunately without our normal co-host, Zachary Owen Turner, but fortunately, we've got our third-time guest, Lance Candler, on the podcast today. How you doing, man?
I am wonderful. Just happy to be here. Sorry Zach's not here, but glad that I was available.
Absolutely. Well, so, I mean, you know, as we know, Zach is a working actor. He is also a working bartender. And for New Year's Eve in New York City, that's kind of like the Super Bowl of bartending. And so Zach got home at this point, because we recorded early in the morning, he was probably home about, 4 or 5 hours ago. So we hope that he is sleeping, and I hope that I can get his review of the most recent Skeleton Crew episodes on the show. It might be a little selfie iPhone recording. But before we get into anything else, we are very, very happy to have Lance here on the show today. We hope, listeners, that all of you had good Christmas celebrations, good New Year's Eve, good New Year's Eve celebrations as we step into 2025. But Lance, as you stepped into 2025, how was your week? How was your Christmas and your New Year's and all that stuff?
Oh, it was great. You know, we've got a new baby now. So we've got a 2-year-old, and then, today, actually, she's 5 months old. She was born on the 1st. So we did Christmas to death. I bet we had 8 Christmases with every little piece of the family, every combination, and those 2 girls, they just raked it in. So they're living in hog heaven right now, just playing with all their toys. So, and I think my wife and I are both exhausted from it, but we survived it, and had a great time. So how about you?
Love it. I did, obviously, no kids in my life, but I'd had, I think, 3 different, completely distinct Christmas celebrations. My family, Jenny's family, and then just like kind of our friends and stuff. We had a friend's Christmas this year, and so that was all good. Had lots of wonderful times with lots of wonderful people, and then partied a little too hard for New Year's last night, but it's okay. I'm here to be with you, Lance, and all of you loyal Force of Others listeners, and if I fall asleep during the podcast, it's not because I'm bored at what Lance is saying. It's because I'm old and sleepy. But Lance, so you had a wonderful week with lots of family and all those things. Did Star Wars find you in this holiday season?
It's hard for Star Wars not to find you when you have a show like The Skeleton Crew that is on actively right now. So, nice. So my last 2 weeks has basically just been rewatching this on repeat, because it seems like every time I start an episode, something happens and I miss big chunks of the middle of it. I'm dealing with a toddler tantrum, or somebody comes to the door, or something happens. So I have just started, every time I sit down, I start on episode 1 and I just work my way through. And so I have rewatched this show, I think, more than I've watched any Star Wars content, other than maybe the Clone Wars and the movies. But I'm loving it. So
cool. I love it. Well, and I'm gonna. Well, yeah. So overall, because everybody's heard Zach and my takes on Skeleton Crew, so it sounds like you like the show.
I do like the show. I think that, which is good, because otherwise this would not be very fun to listen to. I think that this is peak Star Wars. I mean, this is just, it shows that you can do a show without it being, the galactic future on the line, right? It doesn't always have to be these huge, huge stakes. And that if they'll back off, if they'll stay in their lane, if they'll pay attention to, which we'll talk about later, but if they'll pay attention to pacing, if they'll pay attention to how they manage stories and characters, then they can really tell any story they want to. There's nothing about this show that is necessarily Star Wars. If they just scraped Star Wars off the front title, then it could be its own thing, right? But it works, and it works in the Star Wars universe because they're not getting too serious about it.
Yeah. I like it. Well, and obviously we're going to get more into Skeleton Crew because we got 2 whole episodes to talk about, Because for those keeping score at home, we didn't have an episode of our show last week because we were partying for Christmas and so on and so forth. I know. Shake your head. Family sometimes comes over our Star Wars podcast. But as for how Star Wars found me the last 2 weeks, there were two kind of interesting ways. It is funny that the first way it found me was related to Lord of the Rings. We don't have our resident Lord of the Rings fan in Zachary Owen Turner, but I forget, YouTube was just YouTubing and kind of auto-playing in the background of whatever I was supposed to be doing. And I saw an interview with Lord of the Rings screenwriter, Philippa Bowens, and she just got asked what was her first movie memory ever, because she's a big movie fan, right? And her first movie memory ever was Star Wars. And I was like, ha! Yeah! Even Lord of the Rings! Star Wars is an influence to it as well, even though Lord of the Rings came first as a novel. But the other way Star Wars found me was a very, very strange, kind of unexpected situation where I didn't know that this word existed outside of Star Wars. So I was watching my theater company's production of Annie at Christmas, which it's fun when I don't direct a show and I don't really have much to do with it at all because I'm actually able to just watch a show like a theater fan and not going, oh my God, I hope they get their lines right? I'm just able to go, oh, cool, fun, a theater play, weird. And as they're introducing Annie for the 75th time in some scene, they described her as a foundling. And I went and leaned back and I'm looking around, and of course I'm the only nerd in the group that I'm with that would know foundling from The Mandalorian, but I was like, that was a word before that Annie, a foundling? What is this? So that happened. I didn't realize that existed other than talking about non-native born Mandalorians that were brought into the creed.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of like Padawan. I thought it was a made up youngling term.
Well, and Lance, you're smarter than me, so now I'm going to Google foundling. Oh, no, so when you Google it, an infant that has been abandoned by its parents and is discovered and cared for by others.
Oh.
Now, the second thing on Google are foundlings Mandalorians. So, so one of those things, but here I was thinking that Jon Favreau was creative, and I was wrong. He was watching the Annie musical at one point and went like, oh, foundling, cool word, I'm going to put it in Star Wars.
That's Matt's takeaway from the episode, is that Jon Favreau is, in fact, not creative.
Hey, you heard it here first, kids. Grogu, no, stole the idea from Annie. But last thing, real quick, before we get into Skeleton Crew or Skeleton Crew Love Fest for this week, I want to just take a moment and to mention the Star Wars actor Angus McInnes passed away earlier this last week. We just got this news this morning. He played Gold Leader in Star Wars A New Hope. John Dutch Vander is the character's name that only people like us would know that name, because he's just in the movie, Red Leader, this is Gold Leader, and that's about what you got. And just a quick mention that when they brought him back in Rogue One, I already liked that movie, but I might have cheered more for that moment than the Darth Vader hallway scene, because I'm pretty sure I just went, I went, how? Because, Darth Vader, you can put I don't want to say you can put anybody in the suit, but you can put a big guy in the suit, and it's like, all right, yeah, great, Vader, cool. But to see new shots of him, because they found the original film stock from, where they didn't find it, but it make it sound like they went on an Indiana Jones quest and went into George's vault. But they were just in Lucasfilm at some point and found these old reels of footage in Rogue One. People were like, what's that? They were like, well, that's Star Wars. That's all the extra stuff. And there were some unused shots of Red Leader and Gold Leader, and they were like, we're putting this in the movie. And they brought Mr. McInnes back to record a couple lines. I think it's when the Y-Wings make the run on the Star Destroyer. Mm-hmm. I think he just came back, and it's like, I hit that opening! And that's about it. But that's him. And so just the best wishes to his family and all of his loved ones. It seems like he was a very well-loved family man on top of being a Star Wars actor.
Well, and it seems like we've lost quite a few Star Wars people, even peripheral characters here in the last couple of years.
Well, and it's going to get to be that way. We're coming up on the 50th anniversary of the first movie. I say coming up. We're still 2 years away from that, but that's, when most of those actors were in their 20s and 30s and stuff. It's we're coming to that point. Just one of those things. The onward passage of time is it sucks.
There you go. That was profound.
I was debating saying something profound, and then I was like, nah. But anyway, so as we go into the new year, embrace every moment. And speaking of things that are embraceable, I really liked Skeleton Crew these last 2 weeks. We're interviewing 2 episodes today. You have a lot to learn about pirates. That was episode 5, directed by Jake Schreier. And episode 6, Zero Friends Again, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who by now is Star Wars royalty. Bryce Dallas Howard, and at this point, when is she going to get her own show? Like, if she wants to, give her a show, please.
So
in my mind, she always crushes it.
What else is she doing other than Star Wars right now? Are you familiar with her career? Because I do wonder, is she making movies? Is she performing? Is she doing other things that she would like to just have these one-offs every once in a while?
Well, I do know that I say I know. I do believe that she has kids.
Oh, okay.
And so it might just be that that she's a family person, and she's like, yeah, I'll go play and do a Star Wars from time to time. But in terms of like directing stuff, it looks like she's got other gigs here and there. She directed an episode of the Santa Stories last year.
Yeah.
Whatever that was. Yeah,
the Santa Stories.
I mean, she does gigs here and there. It might just be... Oh, and she was in Argyle, the Matthew Vaughn spy movie with Henry Cavill that I did not see.
She's still doing Jurassic Park things, isn't she?
Oh my gosh, are they making more of those?
Oh, forever.
It's like it's the Deadpool Wolverine joke. Till you're 90. But I mean, at a certain point, you just put pretty people running away from dinosaurs, and you can make dinosaur films for forever. It's no different than Godzilla in a way. But anyway, I love Bryce Dallas Howard's work, and I love her Star Wars work in particular. We'll get into the specifics of that episode in a second. But opening thoughts for both episodes, out from the jump. If you listened to our last podcast, I was right. Filler got a filler. None of episode 4 is coming back. I tell you right now, all of the like Troik versus the Hotten, that's never gonna come back. The only thing that might prove me wrong was that they did have Heine in the recap at the top of episode 5, the girl that kissed Neil's trunk.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, they might bring that back, but then it was never referenced in the episode. So I don't know. But filler got a filler, but it's okay, because for episode 5, we were back to grade A choice, prime, USDA certified Star Wars beef. This was the good stuff. It was Misdirections, the episode. I loved everything about it. And it's funny that Zach isn't here, but he's had this long-standing bit on the show where when we went through our top 5 Star Wars live-action episodes, he realized that the 5th episode of every Star Wars series is like his favorite. It's like always the best one or one of the better ones, and I'm pretty sure he loved it, but I'm curious to see if that held true. And then the only other opening thought that I had before we get into specific likes was my absolute freak out that in episode 6 we have a Star Wars in-universe pirate shanty.
I know. I wrote that down. Yeah. In fact, on my notes it says Zach would love this.
We may or may not record said pirate shanty and get vocalists together and add harmonies and be dorks about it. We'll turn it into a drinking song, but or the internet will probably make that happen. But we're gonna try and do it as well. But so all that to say, it was a weird episode 4, but episode 5 and 6. Were only weird in that I liked them as much as I did. So, Lance, what are your opening thoughts for these 2 episodes of Skeleton Crew?
Yeah, absolutely perfect. And I think both of these episodes absolutely
cool.
perfect, which
Cool.
I'm really looking forward to getting into, especially episode 6, because I loved episode 6 for what
Cool.
it was. But no, it was great. Like I said before, I thought the pacing was perfect. You got lost in them. You know, it was, you can always tell when a show is good when the credits pop up and you're not mad that the credits are there. You feel like you got like an adequate bite of Star Wars. And that's what it was when Jod lights that lightsaber at the end was just, oh, that was wonderful. My only problem with these 2 episodes is the lightsaber does not come back in episode 6.
I didn't even think about that. That's right.
But I believe it's the Chekhov's lightsaber, so I'm sure that we will at some point be getting Jod as a lightsaber duelist.
Well, yeah, I didn't even think about that. So, and this is a sidebar, but I have to go down this tangent now. So, again, listeners, we record this on Wednesday morning, which means the soonest I could watch the show was last night. And I watched it very, very quickly before my wife and I were running off to a New Year's Eve party. And so I was writing and just watching and speed writing notes. But yeah, you would have thought that the lightsaber would have come out immediately when he was about to get captured by the pirates. But that didn't happen, right?
Yeah, or by Mr. Werewolf Man, Brutus, at Tu Brute, when he has Jod in his trial. What pirate doesn't love to play with a cool sword, right?
Yeah.
You would think that he would have that out.
That's interesting. Well, it'll probably come back at a cool time. I mean, I'm telling you right now, there ain't no way Brutus makes it out of this show. That dude is dead for sure.
Dog meat.
I was wrong on one prediction where I thought they were going to kill Wim, the pirate. Not Wim, Kim, the owl cat from episode 3. I thought that was how the pirates were going to find him. They were going to track them through her. Happy to see that didn't happen because I like Kim a lot and I want more Kim. But anyway, tangents avoided and back onto the railroad tracks of this episode. Lance, take us through them. Give me all your likes for episode 5, all the things that stood out most positively to you.
Okay, I thought the music was fantastic, specifically in this episode. I think that we are seeing that non-John Williams Star Wars music can work, right? John Williams has a very specific, like, symphonic, grandiose style that is beautiful for Star Wars. This is not that at all, right? This is very, like, character-based. Like, just the opening scene when the grown-ups are doing their little failed attempt at piracy. And you hear the in the background, it sounds like a clock, right? It's this doom, gong, doom, gong, through the whole thing.
Nice.
It makes that scene. But then as you keep watching through the show, every time they start to do something piratey, they get this really like harpsichord based, like piratey type music that it works really well. It reminds me a lot of the soundtrack to the Sherlock Holmes TV show with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I didn't think about that before, but you're
I
absolutely
meant to go
right.
back and look and see because I don't even know who is composing for this.
It's
It's
Mick Giacchino.
Giacchino.
Yes, it's Michael Giacchino's son.
Well, he does have the Star Wars lineage in him.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, perfect then. I thought that, especially in this episode, SM-33 and Jod are having this like very cool, serious pirate movie that's happening around them, and the kids are not, and they keep pulling them out of it. And so you'll hear Jod do this like really cool, piratey, scary speech, and then Fern immediately pulls him back into the reality that he's babysitting 4 kids. So if you watch this episode and just ignore everything that our 4 children are doing, it becomes a really serious, different type of show. I thought when they landed what's the name of the ship?
The Onyx Cinder.
The Onyx Cinder, and the hubcap falls off and goes rolling across. That is peak Star Wars humor.
It's awesome.
That's everything Han and Chewie. We got a callback to the banking clan and the Muns.
Yes.
We see a couple of Muns in their little Mun hot tub, right? And Scipio. He says, because he calls him out, he says, you're whatever Professor Gorlox from Scipio, where all the Muns live. And so that's what got him called out on that. I thought the language in the episode was really cool. They keep bringing back things like wizard and Sleemo and all these things that got made fun of in episode 1 are now gaining a little bit more Star Wars street cred.
Yeah, that was something by Christopher Ford and John Watts. They clearly either love episode 1 or at least have studied it. Because like you said, even Sleemo, all of the random references that they're using are from Star Wars episode 1, which is wild.
Well, here you want to talk about a tangent. Here's something that I've been suspicious of for a long time. I think that occasionally Lucasfilm makes Star Wars movies or Star Wars, shows, Star Wars media that are not fantastic for different reasons. Mm-hmm. And I think that they use further down the line media to try to come back and retroactively make them good. I think that we have seen a lot of modern day stuff that affects directly 20-year-old Star Wars or 15-year-old Star Wars for the better.
100%. I mean, I think that, in a way, I think that might be a company directive coming out of the sequels, where so much of the sequels were, in my opinion, the sequel trilogy, every movie was an antidote to the previous Star Wars thing.
Okay.
Where The Force Awakens the first line, this will begin to make things right. And JJ was very transparently anti-prequels. And then The Last Jedi was kind of an antidote to The Force Awakens, and then The Rise of Skywalker was an antidote to The Last Jedi. Everything was kind of a fix or a response to things that were not liked about the last thing. And then coming out of that, it's been a lot of we're going to embrace this franchise. That's might be a little chaos theory, but I of the two options, I definitely prefer a way to be let's have fun with even the weird parts of this franchise that's been around for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like we talked about back on our Clone Wars episode. The Clone Wars TV show helped the prequel trilogy immensely, right? You watch that show and you're like, oh, right. The story George was trying to tell was too big for 3 movies. You could not fit it in.
We talked about this a little bit when you had your Clone Wars episodes, but I have a really hard time watching the prequel trilogy not from a Clone Wars vantage point. I can't remove that from my mind. And so I can't imagine what it would be like to try to watch the prequel trilogy for the first time without having the Clone Wars there to help affect it. But I know that that's where a lot of people struggled. And anytime that I get into the notorious prequel trilogy hate conversation that happens everywhere I go, because I'm a prequel trilogy apologist, then all the stuff that they bring out that they don't like about it, 100% solved if you watch the Clone Wars.
Yeah, all the plot inconsistencies are solved. It doesn't, and I think that's the way the franchise is going to go. People really take for granted that the continuity of the Star Wars franchise is something that no other franchise does. Mm-hmm. Star Trek has had tie-in novels going back to the days of the original series. None of it is canonical. None of it fits. Bill Shatner pitched a way for Kirk to come back in a Star Trek movie after not Next Generation. The movie was called Star Trek Generations, where, spoilers for a 30-year-old movie, Captain Kirk dies. he pitched a way for him to come back, and basically, and literally what Paramount said was, no, but we'll let you write a novel. And he said, great. So there's novels out there that exist that are William Shatner's fan fiction for the resurrection of Captain Kirk. But to have a franchise like Star Wars where the entire continuity, at least with what they say is the plan, where it all fits, is insane. Mm-hmm. Nobody does that. The closest to it is Marvel, with the TV shows and the movies, but obviously, the 70 years or however many years it's been of Marvel Comics, there's no continuity with the movies. That's impossible. But there is with Star Wars, since Disney set the slate clean in 2014 and just wiped Legends, right? Mm-hmm. So because of that, we are, for the rest of our natural lives and long after, going to be getting Star Wars stories that fill in all the gaps. So it was like that in Legends, but it was never canon, right? It never meshed. So yeah, all of the inconsistencies are going to get filled in by other stuff, is what I'm trying to say, and that's the good part, and sometimes the annoying part of Star Wars, where it's like, I do like this. I don't need to know every second of Anakin Skywalker or Ahsoka Tano's life.
Well, I think what they're doing right now, I agree with you. I think what they're doing right now, and that's why they're forcing everybody to kind of play in this like sequel trilogy era or immediately pre-sequel trilogy era, is because they want to take these TV shows and they want to fill in all the gaps in a way that affect and improve and kind of redesign what the sequel trilogies are, so that they can make them work by way of, doctoring all these little fringe TV shows.
Well, and to a degree, it's like what we just said at the beginning of this tangent. That's what they did with Clone Wars, right, for the prequels, and
it worked.
And it worked. And I mean, the biggest reason we're getting New Republic era content almost exclusively is just because it's a way to have synergy and you can tie these stories in. Watts and Ford, the creators of Skeleton Crew, in case you don't know at home, I saw an interview where they said they didn't pitch this in the New Republic era. It was just kind of a happy opportunity where they were like, well, this era has been really well fleshed out in terms of the aesthetic and just the landscape of what the galaxy's like at this point. So let's just put this show in this era. But you could, with just a couple different lines, set this at any point. This could have been the same time as The Acolyte, right? This could have been the same time. This could have been within the sequel trilogy, kind of. You have to change it a little bit, but not really. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. You can make the inconsistencies that are still there a little less inconsistent by saying, well, hey, actually, we've learned from this Skeleton Crew show that whatever was really only because of this. Which, it is what it is. But back to Skeleton Crew. That was fun.
Okay, so Dash Zenton, I love that he has different names everywhere he goes, and I love that they comment on it. Because of course he does. Because of he wants the people that are looking for him in one part of the galaxy to not be the people looking for him in the other part of the galaxy, right? The booby traps were great. It felt very Goonies, very Indiana Jones. And then the treasure room is set up and looks exactly like One-Eyed Willie's cabin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. That's all I had for likes.
Right on. So for this episode, I'll say it from the jump. If I gave all of my likes, it would probably be, I would just recap the entire episode for you. Because I thought this was right back to firing on all cylinders. Just all of the comedy. I laughed at every single intended joke in episode 5. It all played for me. I'll mention specific beats, but not all of them. I really, really liked Wendell's computer, Wim's dad. You referenced the scene earlier when they were like the little parent caper, or we're finding out that they have a plan of their own. It is a really specific aesthetic for Star Wars technology where they're trying to do 70s analog, but a futuristic version of that, right? And I thought that just the way that they portrayed a utopian version of 70s futuristic analog was really, really cool, and I thought that they crushed it. Just the graphics on his screen and the way the keyboard looked. This is me just going on and on and on about a fake computer, but I saw it, I was like, ooh, that's cool. I like that a lot. And there's just that line from the droid, "Sir, please show me both of your hands at the same time." It was so fun. Yeah.
And they did a great job with comedic timing on that. They took enough pauses. The droid delivered the lines in the right way. It was fun. And Star Wars is best when it's funny.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. It's that it's such a silly, fun intended for all ages franchise. There need to be jokes.
Mm-hmm.
There just need to be jokes. It's like, we're aware that none of this makes any sense, so let's have a good time. But that was a moment. The "Sir, please show me both of your hands at the same time." That is a moment that in the hands of a less capable storytelling team could have been very, very cringy and awkward.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And not funny at all. But they made it sing, right? I loved that Jod became a kid when he was hearing about pirate legends.
Yeah.
Right? All of a sudden, he's the one. He's the whim that's just freaking out. You don't know who Tak Reddit is. So here's my message to Lucasfilm. Star Wars, don't be afraid of introducing in-universe legends that the characters think are cool. If the characters think it's cool and the story thinks it's cool, it will seem interesting to the audience. Mm-hmm. If the characters make fun of it or are like, that doesn't matter, it's stupid, then we're sitting here going, then why are we watching this movie? And shots fired, I'm looking at you, Last Jedi. If you make fun of your own story, I kind of don't care about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It was something that I didn't realize was, in my opinion, absent from The Last Jedi until I was watching Rise of Skywalker, and it's that stupid, goofy little moment with Lando in his tank on the desert planet that I can't remember, Pisana, where the goofy stuff with Exegol. Of course you're looking for Exegol. But the whole thing of, like, have you been there? Yeah, I was there with Luke. We were chasing a Jedi hunter. I was like, oh my God, you mean they went on Star Wars adventures and we're not going to make a thing out of it? We're just going to say it happened? I was like, right, yes. I didn't realize that was absent from The Last Jedi. There was no grand adventure off screen. It was, well, we're doing this and this and this and this and this, and life sucks, and there's no real whimsy in this story. I get that wasn't the theme, but it is refreshing to then watch a show where he's like, Tak Reddit was the greatest Star Wars Captain Hook you've never heard of, and he did this and this, and it was amazing. So anyway, there's an essential element, I think, in Star Wars to just mention grand adventures off screen, right? Mm-hmm. My favorite part of this episode, an episode that I loved, was Jod twisting Jedi dogma for his own pirate ends. That he has applied a new meaning to your focus determines your reality. I like grabbed my temples and was like, what is this? Wild. Because that's such a cool, selfless thing, and that he has weaponized selflessness to be selfish, I thought was absolutely fascinating. And sidebar, but the whole relationship between Jod and Wim is not at all what Zach and I expected. And I thought that's very, very cool. I thought he was going to be this whole scene where Jod sees Wim's crying and he's like, fine, I'll give the kid the pick-me-up speech.
Well, he's disgusted by it. That's a great Jude Law decision. Yeah. He walks in and he goes, oh.
And he doesn't go have some compassion for the kid until he finds out his mom's gone.
Yeah.
It's like, you'll see him soon, not my mom. And he's, ugh. And just cut to him sitting next to the kid. But we thought that it was going to be that Jod was going to present himself as the father that Wim thinks he needs, and not in any way. The only time he's really been compassionate to him at all, he's got a knife to one of the kids' throats by the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I just thought it was very interesting that I didn't predict it at all. This whole idea for an episode of that everything that we thought Skull Ridge Mountain would be versus what it has become is so funny. And there was so much comedy just from that situation. It was brilliant and hilarious. Just the entire concept of this crew of children going to an adult entertainment planet and just the kids going, "What's a concubine?" And Jude Law's like, Well,
it's so piratey too, because if you look at like the Bahamas and Nassau and like all those different pirate ports from 300-400 years ago, that's what they all are now. All the Blackbeard would be horrified to see what it is now.
I didn't even think about that. That's hilarious. Well, and you talk about a moment that they could have been so awkward, but they just made sing. It's just the line, "The Demon's Rest, Battle World, Lanupa." It was awesome. Oh my gosh. Those are murderous pirates, no doubt. Pretty sure they're pleasure yachts. What? No, they've ruined this place. The way they chose to sneak the kids in from the Bratrick system, the most wise elders, the goofy like language they were making up, and that they rode down on whatever that is, like Jawas. All right, I gotta finish my likes, but Cathalops, I love him. I love him. I want more of him and less of everything else. That was so. Even watching the trailer, Zach and I were talking about, they're gonna have some kind of fight with an octopus monster in a cave. No, it's like I don't even know. It's a guy with a mustache. It's like a seal or something, and he's adorable. Maybe one day I'll hear your story. Just everything was just great, but then it also had real danger. That you want to talk about a sequence that could have been awkward, but I thought had just the right amount of tension without being too scary. Everything with Jude Law, just say you yield. Mm-hmm. Just say you yield. I don't want to hurt you, but while also he played it so well and it was directed and edited so well where you're going, he would absolutely do this. He doesn't want to, but he might. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you saw it coming, but I liked that Wim tried to save them with a lightsaber, but then succeeded in saving them by triggering the trap. Mm-hmm. So he was still able to save himself and the kids, but not in the way that he originally intended. They definitely played their hand a little heavy with the music, where it's like all epic, and I'm like, this ain't gonna work. There ain't no way. But all right, so them's all my likes for episode 5. It took forever to get them out because there was a lot to like. Do you have any dislikes or struggles with episode 5?
I have no dislikes in this episode. I
don't either.
If it's not perfect, it's really, really close.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, friends, boring content, because we didn't have any dislikes. We're just shameless fanboys about this one. But do you have any other? I've got a lot of other discussion points for episode 5.
I just had a couple things I wanted to bring up. One is that Fern is a total brat in this episode.
Yeah.
And we know, we're watching this now knowing that in the next episode that's going to get brought up. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get dealt with. But she the way she responded to Jod the whole way through and to her other friends was pretty terrible. Which I thought that because Wim kind of started off as the brat with Neil. But they've shifted that over to Fern now. And then the other thing is the "forget them" speech that Jude Law gives about attachments. I think that maybe he was a youngling Jedi that never got chosen as a Padawan or got kicked out for some reason. Okay. Because he keeps showing not Sith, not some other Force using. He keeps showing Jedi dogma, specifically Jedi dogma. But he has this distaste for it and kind of this corrupted view of it, because the "forget them" is 100% what they would teach younglings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They would just do it. And we've heard that same lesson over and over again, but we always hear it from the way the Jedi would frame it, which is attachments lead to hate and that whole thing. But what he heard from it is that the Jedi are telling you the only way you can be successful is you have to forget everybody that you love. Just forget of them and move on. Ooh. And it was beautiful to see what the mistakes in the Jedi dogma, what damage they can do to a young person that doesn't jump in with both feet.
Yeah.
So this is almost like the anti Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, because afraid isn't the right word, but I've been wary that Jude Law is going to turn out to be another Order 66 survivor. Because, like, I get it, that's a cool thing, but we have seen that to death in the last couple years. I'm really intrigued by the idea of what you just said, that he was someone that just didn't get chosen as a Padawan, because I don't think we've seen that in canon yet. In Legends, that was entirely possible. You'd be like a Jedi initiate up to a certain point, and then if you didn't get chosen as a Padawan by a knight, then you were, like, sent to, like, the agriculture corps in the Republic or something. It's like, well, you're going to go farm whatever for the rest of your life because you have no skills. You've been raised by these weird monks. So that could be really, really cool if that's the way they went. And then he's like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to be a pirate. Cool. Right on. But what other discussion points did you have?
That was really it for my other questions. We covered everything at the beginning of the show. We're not supposed to do, but we did.
Well, so I was curious about something. I got two things from the that opening sequence with the parents, where they're trying to make contact with the kids in their own way. It's just, what is a barrier access code? They're talking about it like it's not a normal thing, but something that exists when the droids have said in earlier episodes, there is no getting off this planet. Like, you don't leave. That's forbidden. But if access codes exist to leave or send word out, I am still very, very intrigued by the mystery of AT-AT and what any of it means.
Well, I imagine that there are systems and processes in place for it to not be a completely enclosed system. I imagine that the droids have way of contacting, but the droids want to control the way that the messages get out and the way contact with the outside universe happens, right? In a way that AT-AT is not discovered. So they have the ability to either send ships or to send messages through the barrier, but only they have the ability to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, all right. Well, there you go. Thanks. But speaking of the droids, it's like, are the droids on AT-AT really as threatening as they have made them appear? Because twice now we have seen droids be powered down by request. You know what I mean? Fern does it in the first episode to, like, the house droid. She's like, reboot your memory. This is what you saw. And they just do it. And then Fern's mom, whose name I don't remember, did it at the top of this episode instead of the droid, like, you know, arresting Wendell or whatever. So, like, are they really that threatening? I'm just curious. I want to see how that goes. Or is that just something that Fern and her mom can do because they're so, like, high-ranking in this society? Because I don't think anybody else has powered down a droid by command yet.
Well, I think you take the Fern of it all out of there, right? Because she did that to a house cleaning droid.
Fair.
I think that there's a hierarchy thing here. And as far as the security droids, I think it's because Fern's mom is high ranking. I don't think Wendell could have done that.
Okay. Well, there you go. I like that. And I have a question and a speculation. So, in this episode, SM-33 says that the mutinous lot of the crew died in the crash of the Onyx Cinder. He did not mention Captain Tak Rened dying in the crash. And he was looking for the captain when he woke up back in episode 1. So where is Tak Rened? Because he's waking up and he's like, Captain, where's the captain? We got stowaways on the ship. So where is he?
Didn't he say... So he says that the concubine... Didn't he say that the concubine killed him, but before he died, he locked out the controls?
You are right. You did it. There you go. My bad. That was dumb. Because my next question was... Because I think you and I talked about this off air. We texted. I was going to ask, are they setting up, is Tak Rened the supervisor? Or was the image on the hologram unclear? simply because it doesn't matter. And they're just like, it'll be more mysterious. We don't have to design a character. And if we come up with something cool later, or a Star Wars prequel story featuring Tak Rened, we can cast a famous person. And we don't have to do that right now.
I think that's a very logical and unexciting reason that they would not have rendered out the hologram. I think it's somebody important.
If he's dead, could he be that important? Let me see. On the way, Rened suspected there would be a proving suspicion correct. The first mate challenged him. Rened's concubine betrayed him and stabbed him in the chest with his own dagger. So, yeah. Prior to his death, he locked the crew out of the controls, like you said.
So when Jod at the beginning of the series pulls that dagger out and the skeleton falls down and he keeps that dagger, is that Tak?
Until we know anything differently, that sounds good to me.
Perfect.
So there we go.
I did think that the voice that they used, if we want to really scrape the bottom of the barrel for a dislike, I think that was a little too on the nose for a pirate.
I think it's uncredited because I looked, but I was curious, and my irresponsible speculation is that was either Christopher Watts or John Watts or Christopher Ford, because we talked about earlier on the show that they've talked about when they were in college. They made a pirate like radio drama with like them and their friends. So it would not surprise me at all if that was one of them going, "I'm gonna do a pirate voice on my show," and Zach will be very happy because there we go. Someone did a goofy pirate voice on today's episode. So my last thing, my last like other question for episode 5 before we move into episode 6 was that hut one of the twins from the Book of Boba Fett? Because I was like, ooh, cool. It's not. It's the exact same, like, chin tattoo. It's a different color. But I was like, ooh, wait, what? It's not. It's just another hut. But, all right, so moving on to episode 6. Before we get into specific likes, I just wanted to say when they brought up the whole demolition sequencer in the recap at the top of the episode, I was like, so here it is. Yeah. So that will happen before this episode has ended. And
wasn't it glorious?
It was it was so interesting, and then they laid it on pretty thick that, Tak Rened said the ship is armored and ready to go.
Yeah.
It was like, but okay, so specific likes for episode 6, Zero Friends Again.
So I thought sliding through the tunnels was like a shot for shot from the Goonies.
Yeah.
To the point where I was sitting there watching him, and I said, if they fall out into an underground lake, this might have officially gone too far. But then they didn't. It ejected them out where the trash is. So that made sense. That was fine. I think the KB development from this episode made the episode. I think it was so good. It was so profound. And it really brought forth, I think, maybe a way that a lot of kids that are struggling with either a handicap or something where they feel like they're different, this is the way they feel, right? So it's that they can't, or they feel like sometimes they can't keep up with other people, but they'll never admit that because they feel like their friends will leave them. They feel like their friends won't have patience. And that was it really was touching to me to hear her go through all of that. And for Wynn to just pop up and say, well, you can just be friends with us, it's fine. And how meaningful that was to her. I think it was a very profound, beautiful moment with her dying on the beach. And then for her to pop up, for him to save her and her to be like, whew, I almost died there. to watch Wynn lose his mind knowing that she was that close to dying was really good. Jod coming out of the manhole, just dripping in pirate treasure was wonderful. And I thought, oh, this is so good. And then 30 seconds later, to have SM-33 come out of the manhole dripping with treasure too was even better. That whole scene made me laugh. And then for SM-33 to be like, aye, Captain, and come charging out of the manhole, and they shoot him once, and he fires out. It was great. I thought the trash crabs were very Star Wars.
And they were weird. They made no sense, but them repeating friendly, I was like, this is stupid, and I love it.
Yeah. I thought it was nice that we didn't get a fight with the trash crab, the queen trash crab, because once again, pacing, right? I didn't have it in me to sit there and go through another fight that I know they're going to eventually win. So it was nice that they were able to just be like, ugh, and turn around and run away. And then Wim's line of like, why am I always wrong about who the good guy is? It's really funny because he had just gone through all that stuff with John. I thought the old lady on the ship was like the one that called for Jod to be able to have his time to speak was like a carbon copy of Mama Fratelli from the Goonies. It was her same voice. It was her same. Yeah. Her character look was the same. And so there comes a point where they have to be doing this on purpose, right?
Oh, they are, for sure. 100. They haven't said it, but like they are. You know?
I wrote down John sang a pirate shanty, and Zach would love that.
Matt did too.
Good, yeah. Chekhov's emergency hole demolition sequencer.
Yeah.
We knew that was going to come up. I did not think that it was going to come up like this. And they handled it really well. They brought up half a dozen times. Never, ever, ever are we supposed to do this, but we're going to do this. And we're just going to, whatever happens is what happens. Mm-hmm. And that was the dumbest name for a button that I've ever heard. The emergency hole demolition sequencer. I was going, what purpose would that be? And then this was brilliant.
Yeah.
So it removes, it slips off all the armor from the hull, which is great. And then the ship looks great.
Yeah, I was curious if this means that the ship is going to be like good now, because if I remember right, like it looked pretty clean and like sleek after it got off all the crummy pirate armor.
Yeah,
and it looked ready to go. So it'll be kind of interesting if it is faster and better now.
Yeah, well, and I wrote in my other questions there at the end that I can't wait until we get the Lego Star Wars ship that's going to come apart into two pieces. I thought that the kid language throughout this episode was really cool. The way he says like claimsies on the new ship, or it's too invincible. It's exactly the way that kids talk. When he says he's got too good a chomp on us, it's exactly the way kids talk, and so it really leans hard into because TV shows, movies. Anytime it's a kid-based, and Stranger Things is the worst on this, but anytime it's a kid-based media, the kids always talk and act and make decisions and everything just like they're adults. And so it becomes like, okay, why do we have kids here? Yeah. Like, if you're going to have them all act like adults, then just make it a story about adults. But this is definitely a whole bunch of kids that are outside of their depth handling this.
You know, I loved in that sequence in particular, I had it on my likes as well, that they kept the danger up while keeping it clear that they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, exactly, 100%.
Well, and this show does a really good job of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, all right. Do you have other likes?
I don't have other likes.
Oh. We got more to say, though. Okay. So, the things that stuck out to me, just a line that I love making fun of characters with an eye patch or whatever, and so just for Jod to say the greatest treasure you'll ever lay your eye on. It was very Robert Downey Jr. talking to Samuel L. Jackson in the MCU or something, right? Yeah. And this is just silly. I am a fanboy. I gasped and cheered when X-Wings appeared. I was just like, yay! And then I laughed at myself. And their whole thing, wait, those are the good guys. I really liked and appreciated Fern's inability to accept not being in control. And I liked that for that kind of middle part of the episode when we split up into teams, it was the best friends split up, right? Mm-hmm. Neil went with Fern and KB went with Wim, right? We're going to split the team apart in a new way before they come back together stronger than they were before. And just exactly like you said, KB's line of, I'll have zero friends again. Mm-hmm. Just, oh my gut, the guttest of gut punches. I liked that Wim repeatedly in this episode kept having to face reality, and he learned what a hero actually is. I've got more to say about that moment later, but just like learning what it actually means to be a hero in real life. That is a really... This is a sidebar, but this is sidebars the episode. That is a really, really difficult thing to do in a way that still feels Star Wars-y. Mm-hmm. Right? When Star Wars gets too real, and I've talked about it to death, when it gets like very morally gray and kind of stale and small, I'm always like, this stuff isn't real, so why are we trying to make it real? Like, it would never be real. Why? Stop trying to make it like real life, right? But to have him save her life in a way that was simple and small and really, really dire, but there was no Big John Williams score or blasters going off. I thought they did a really good job of still making it feel like a Star Wars moment, if that makes sense.
Well, and KB calls him Jedi at the end of it, which was beautiful. Yep. Because arguably the most Jedi character we have on the show is Jod.
Yeah.
You know,
not even arguably. Yeah. Like, yes.
But she calls Wynn a Jedi because he's the one that's acting like a hero throughout all of this. It was really nice. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. Just a silly little, like, the plasma hourglass was very sci-fi and fun. Mm-hmm. Just he turns it over, and I was like, ooh, cool. I like that. It's like an hourglass lava lamp. Underrated, kind of legitimately terrifying moment. Putting Jod's face up against the glass of the airlock as he watched stuff get sucked out into space. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Which it's very sci-fi fantasy fun, but it's also like, yeah, space is scary, man. Well, that's legitimately scary.
It was walking the plank. It was. Yes. It's the space pirate version of walking the plank.
Yeah. Well, okay. So them's all my likes. I do actually have a couple whiny dislikes or struggles, but what are those for you, if you have any?
I have one.
Oh, okay.
I thought Urkel was underwhelming. I thought he was great in the last episode, but the voice that he chose and the way that I thought he was overdone in a way that the show is usually really good at managing. So
I can see that.
And if that's all the Urkel we get, I'm going to be a little upset that because they kind of marketed him a little bit. Yeah, Julia White was going to be on there, but anyway.
Well, and it's kind of it could be that this is the Captain Phasma thing, right? Where she's marketed really heavily, and it's not her fault that she's not in the show very much. It was just the people going, hey, there's a secondary lead bad guy. Look at them. Aren't they cool? Mm-hmm. And we're all like, oh, wow, what's all the things Captain Phasma's going to do? Oh, nothing. She's going to get a gun to her head and get told to bring the shields down. You know, but yeah, I would agree on that. But did you have any other dislikes, struggles, nitpicks?
No, I really liked this episode. I liked this episode more than 5.
Whoa! I know, really?
I know. I just there was something about KB's plotline that really just spoke to me. So
there were definitely more emotions in this episode. But this is a major nitpick, but it is there. I think that for about kind of like, because you had your opening sequence of them falling, and then they get dumped out into the snow, which that was a nitpick. Not a very threatening booby trap if it just dumps you right out into the snow.
Yeah.
I'm sure that it was something different, however long ago, right? Maybe. It doesn't matter. But I did think that the pacing slowed for a bit when the kids were walking and talking and bickering about what they were going to do next before and then walking and talking again separately. I was kind of like, okay, we could move it along a little bit, but then everything that actually happened in the episode was stellar. Mm-hmm. And then this was just kind of strange. So Fern was controlling a ship with a joystick on the hull. I was like, okay, the sequence is cool, but what? What is happening in this moment? Star Wars is best when it functions at the needs and speed of narrative and shut up, don't think about it too hard. If it's cool, it's going to happen. The George Lucas quote, there is fire in space when I want it in my world.
Yeah.
But it was also kind of like, what is this? You know? But I got more. I got no more nitpicks. So that was it. I really liked the episode. I just thought it got a little slow for a couple parts in there. You need to have the character development, and the character development that was there was phenomenal. The kids have become skeleton crew. They have become a crew for really the first time.
Well, and they did each of their different parts in the being saved from the furnace monster. Were things that Jod had taught them, right? So Wynn got to go do the gun turret because he had to do the gun turret before, and then Neil got to fly the ship because he got to fly the ship before, and so it was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I love that. But so, did you have any other questions or discussion points for this episode?
So, do you think that Jod has become the antagonist now, or do you think that this is a split that is going to be reconciled? Because they've gone out of their way to make him very likable. There's a bond there with the kids. It just feels like he's going to have a reconciliation and a redemption. But, I mean,
Well, it's what we've talked about where, in this episode especially, they did a great job of making it feel dangerous, but also clear that it's kids. So I think this is going to be a Captain Jack Sparrow, Han Solo situation. I knew you'd come back, type thing, where I think he gets away at the end of the show going on other adventures, having sacrificed some of the treasure. Right, or sacrificing all of the treasure and choosing the kids over. Yeah, because yes, he is going to turn good by the end of the show. You don't start the series with him saying the words, "The only thing in life that matters," cold, hard credits. You don't do that without him getting all of the cold, hard credits he could ever possibly want in his life and choosing people over that and choosing to embrace attachment instead of money. So there you go. I think I answered it for myself as I was putting pieces together. At least if I was writing this thing at this point, that's what I would do. You've had him state his life philosophy, and then you're going to change it.
Yeah, it just seems like there comes a point where you've done enough bad that a full redemption, especially with a bunch of kids, is going to be difficult. Han Solo was very cold, hard credits, but he also never held a sword against Princess Leia's throat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true.
And they watched him order the deaths of all those pirates outside the door just coldly.
They didn't die, though.
Well, no, I guess not, because they caught him there at the end. But
some of them did. Some of them did. But for sure, Gunter got out, obviously. And that struck me as kind of a silly Indiana Jonesian thing of like, turn the acid back on. Wait, what?
Oh, see, I thought it was cold and terrifying, and I thought the whole temperature of the room changed when he ordered that. Because it's almost like he had this whole game that he was playing, and then he turned to SM-33 and he said, "Okay, here we are. Is the treasure real? Yes, it's real. Turn on the acid outside, and I now challenge to be captain." I mean, it was scary.
I mean, at that moment, I don't know. I just think with the tone of this show, the only ways forward would be for him to die or him to be redeemed and use that lightsaber to save the kids.
I think we're going to get an Acolyte type story where he's going to be on a ship, he's going to be captive, he's going to be something, and he's going to tell everybody what his childhood was like that led him to where he is. And I think that will prime a redemption.
Well, they did say in an interview at some point, somebody said this, that in episode 7, you find out the story of Jod Nanawut.
Well, so that's next week?
That's next week. So you're on the money. And then that will all be queued up and ready to go for the finale. Where I think he's gonna undouchebag himself. He will become. I think it's redemption time. But I really only had one kind of other question and silliness, and this might be going into a little bit of a non-family friendly moment for a second, but when Jod is making his pitch to all the pirates about all they could do with this money, he says to one of them that that field of glowweed you're trying to grow, is that Star Wars cannabis?
That's what I got.
So glowweed, we now know. At some point we'll see somebody lighten up some glowweed. But okay. Well, so we've done it. We have reviewed both of these episodes. I've got a little chunk of thoughts for my closing thoughts for this. But Lance, closing thoughts on episodes 5 and 6 of Skeleton Crew.
I think the biggest thing is just that we have seen through these last 2 episodes that the casting for this show is perfect. Each one of these characters is absolutely perfect. I think getting somebody like Jude Law, who has the looks and the charisma and the charm on screen, is exactly who you need for something like this, because you want him to be a good guy. You're pulling for him to be a good guy. And when we got to see him, like I said before, just flip that light switch and just become cold and cruel and a pirate, oh, it was so good. And I don't think it would have worked with somebody else. And then kids notoriously are hard to cast because they can't act a lot of times.
It's true.
I mean, it is what it is, you know? And so, I mean, you see great actors nowadays that you can go back and watch them when they're kids and they were not good. These kids are great. And each one is their own little archetypal Stephen King style kid on a bicycle that's doing exactly what they were put there to do. And so we get to see the development in Neil. We get to see the development in Fern in this episode. We get to see, because I think something we glossed over is her tying that rope around Neil. Because she starts off just yelling at him for not doing it. And then you can tell that off screen somewhere they had a discussion about it. She tied a rope around him and she's talking him through how to climb up the side of that mountain. So she becomes a leader. We get to see KB and maybe not development, but understanding a little bit more of where she's coming from, which she is way more droid than I thought she was.
Yes, I'm very curious what the deal with her implants is, and I hope that it never gets explained.
Well, they said that she had an accident, right?
Oh, I missed that.
Because she says, like, well, after the accident, Fern always thought that I could do more than I could do.
Oh, gosh.
And so there's something big that's going on there. But, I mean, he was shoving that whatever servo in the back of her head.
Pretty far into her skull. Yeah.
So I would be very curious to know what's going on there. But she's great. And then Wynn is doing great. So I'm a big fan of the acting and the casting choices. Yeah.
Yeah. And it goes to say that the writing in many ways is almost actor proof, which is something that like I tell my students, your storytelling needs to be audience proof. But that comes from the writing being actor proof, the directing being actor proof, so that you are just set up to execute the story. You know what I mean? But 100% in all those things. Overall, it's like what you were just talking about, my closing thoughts. The kids have become a team. Fern had to deal with accepting that everybody else has individual strengths. They aren't weak because they can't do the same things she can. But she still has to be the one to make the call to hit the hull demolition sequencer. Because she's the captain. She's a leader. You can harness other people's strengths to help the team, but you cannot shy away from your own strengths either. And I loved that they made such a thing of her having to learn to be part of the team. But, like, to me, that was also in a way of her learning that it is also okay to still be the decision maker. You know? And then after episode 5, I wrote, Wim is going to learn what it means to be an adult. And then, like you said, the quote that he got from KB, you probably thought it would be more exciting to save someone's life. Anyway, thanks, Jedi. Just that's an all-time Star Wars moment.
Yeah.
That's an all-time Star Wars moment. You probably thought it would be more exciting to save someone's life. Thanks, Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to show that to every kid you ever meet, man.
Well, and
Like,
that's why I say this is one of my favorite episodes, because
Yeah.
it's all the women KB stuff that's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right on. And what will probably happen, I was just thinking about this is random, but last tangent for the episode. I'm wondering if after the season is over, and potentially the series is over, we're going to see that the reason they took that, quote-unquote filler tangent 2 episodes ago now, in episode 4, was because they hadn't really found a way to organically fit Neil's strength into the story, right? And it would have been lacking if all the other kids get this moment of growing up in their specific way, and we never really had an opportunity to Neil show that in a way he doesn't need to grow up because he already prioritizes other people. He's kind of got it figured out, right? I could have done without the prototypical, this tribe hates this tribe, so we're going to have a kid teach them about pacifism. It's like, it was a good way to kill 20 minutes. You did it, but we've seen it a lot.
I think it was really fun to hear them recounting that story to the squid monster.
Yes, that's right. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. Yeah, Cathalops, man. Just, I want to meet Cathalops. He seems so fun. I want a giant seal squid monster that's my friend.
Well,
But,
and that's a Greek like archetype, is like the big
Yeah.
monster that you pacify by telling him a good story.
You're exactly right. That's a good point. That's a good
Um,
pull. Well, okay. We did it. We reviewed the episodes. And last fun thing before we, because we don't have time for the mailbag this week, unfortunately. Well, real quick, I tell you what, let me back up. I'm going to have you answer this question, and then Zach and I will answer it next week, if you have an answer.
Okay.
So, this comes from the little brother. Shout out, Mark. Which is the better order to watch the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy? Is it 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Does it truly matter the order that you watch them? What is your take on that?
So the short answer is I do not think it truly matters, because I think you watch them all for the first time once, and then I think you spend the rest of your life watching them with each one affecting the way you view any of the other ones. So I think watch them. As long as you're watching them, it doesn't really matter. That said, I think an argument could be made for the Machete Order just because of the way they kind of bumbled. I hate to say that, or the original trilogy, but the way they kind of bumbled the Leia plot of it all. I don't think there's really any reason in the OT that Leia needed to be Luke's sister, needed to be
It was just
have Jedi tendencies or whatever whatever they want to say. I think that could have all been left out and been fine. If you're going to do it, the Machete Order explains it better.
Yeah. That was much more articulate and concise than I will be next week. Knowing my strengths and weaknesses. I love it. But okay, before we send everybody off into 2025, I got a silly Star Wars question for Lance about his 2025. Do you have a Star Wars New Year's resolution
I
for
do.
this year?
So
Love
this
it.
is where I am weak in Star Wars, okay? I am going to read the High Republic.
Ooh!
I'm
Cool.
going to do it. I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm going to work my way through all that so that I can know what the heck you guys are talking about when you bring that stuff up. Because when that came out, I said, I don't have enough time. And I just completely blacked out anything that was High Republic. And so because of that, I have this big gaping hole in my Star Wars knowledge. So this is the year.
Well, to be fair, I'm the only one of Zach and I that has read any of it. And I've read like 4 of like maybe of like I don't even know how many novels. It's cool. I can say that. It's very much kind of what we thought the Jedi would be before the prequels came out. You know what I mean? And that they're kind of Knights of the Round Table and they're off. They're not stoic, dogmatic. I don't know. They're not putting the galaxy kind of at arm's length.
Well, that's what I want to see because the Acolyte did not show us that.
which is one of the... Yeah. But anyway, so from my Star Wars New Year's resolution, it's a silly one. I mean, the silly answer I could say is like, unlike TK421, I will always be at my post in 2025. But just to steal something from these episodes, this is a cheeseball, Instagrammable, tweetable quote, but make your life the one you want to live. And it comes from a villain who might end up, it's a Jod quote, but who might end up being less of a villain. But honestly, that's all a New Year's resolution is. Mm-hmm. Is do what you know you need to do and you're not doing. Make your life the one you want to live. Cultivate a life you don't want a vacation from. You know what I mean? And as we move into a quarter century, which is wild to think about.
You are very old.
Hey, we are the same age.
No, you are significantly older than I am.
I'm like 3 months older than you.
Significantly.
But sidebar, 2025, I've been saying this for years before we ever got here. This sounds like a year from a bad 80s sci-fi movie.
Mm-hmm.
In the year 2025. Did you think that in the year 2025 you'd be guest hosting a Star Wars podcast?
No, I did not.
Well, in that way, nobody can ever really predict the future. But Lance, let them know. Where can the people find you if they want to?
If they want to, which I would question why they would. I am Lance Candler on pretty much everything. So either that or just email the show, and I'm sure Matt will pass it along.
Right on. Yeah, if you want to find me or Zach or Lance to a degree, because we're going to have him back on the show a couple times at least, probably way more than a couple, neither here nor there, forceofothersradio@gmail.com. Send in your questions. We will answer them on the show eventually. But we want to get you involved on this podcast. Obviously, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Smash that subscribe button. Don't forget to click that bell. Do all the things. Get involved in the best little Star Wars podcast you have never heard of. Because as of right now, we are at 178 people subscribed to this podcast on YouTube. Let's try to get to 200 before too long. I'll come up with something more tweetable later. But without further ado, thank you for spending your time with us this week. We hope you and everyone that you love have a wonderful 2025 and everything moving forward. And remember, the force of others will be with you.
Always.
The Force of Others, a Star Wars podcast.